In Chicago, over 800 people who have been arrested for nonviolent protest-related offenses had their charges dropped. In New York, we heard the DA was doing basically the same thing. And in Fort Worth, they leveled up and said people who had been arrested on rioting charges were having their charges dropped as well. This is the morality policing that I often talk about, and now we see the next iteration. The police are looking for two Trump supporters who painted over a Black Lives Matter mural in California with black paint just hours after residents finished it. I have a question. What gives you the right to paint a political message on a street? Now, I know. You want to have an argument about public buildings and maybe they could commission a mural of some sort, sure. But if you paint something in the street and then someone paints something over it, would that not be the exact same speech? Well, they argue that this mural was sanctioned. And okay, sure, I'm fine with that. But I do believe if people then want to paint a message in the street, the city must open up the streets now because you've made them public forums. Of course, that's not the biggest issue here. Fine. Look, if you want to have a Black Lives Matter mural in the street, I really don't care. I really don't. The issue here is that, well, these people are likely going to be facing some kind of charges for defacing the mural. How many statues have been torn down in the past, month? How many times have we heard the police going and looking out, hunting down these individuals who committed this vandalism and this destruction? How many people were arrested for rioting who got their charges dropped? Yes, morality policing. Their message is acceptable. Their outrage is acceptable. Their vandalism is acceptable. There are many people on social media now saying, oh no, this is wrong. These Trump supporters, these bigots are destroying, are vandalizing, are defacing our images, our symbols. Well, what do you think your rioters are doing? It's the exact same thing. This is the problem with a moralistic government. You cannot determine which group is allowed and which isn't. Well, you're not supposed to be able to, but this is where we are. And now it's actually one-upping once again, because apparently after this, some Black Lives Matter protesters showed up and someone actually pulled a gun on this guy who was skateboarding. I honestly have no idea why. We'll read this story. But here's what really offends me. Is this what you're so concerned about? Is this the big story? Apparently it is. Do you know what's not getting attention among most of these activists? This. Vandals desecrated Frederick Douglass, one of the leaders of the abolitionist movement, an escaped former slave who worked, my understanding, with Harriet Tubman on the Underground Railroad. That's what the statue was commemorating. That was torn down, and someone dragged the statue near the river trying to destroy it. And I guess they were able to find it, and I don't know if it can be repaired. Frederick Douglass was awesome. Why would you tear him down? Now, we don't know who did it. We don't. Perhaps it was a white supremacist, as they would like to say. But I got to tell you, man, how many hoaxes have there been? Donald Trump recently came out condemning Bubba Wallace over at NASCAR, saying, have you apologized yet for that noose hoax? Of course, the media is defending Wallace. But yeah, Bubba Wallace at NASCAR said they found, someone found a noose in his garage. It was a garage pull rope. Whenever something happens, they claim it was a white supremacist. Over in Seattle, when that car hit those protesters, they said it was a deliberate right-wing attack. Many far leftists are claiming that the people inside the Chaz the people who died were killed by white supremacists. That's what they always do, and it's not true. It's just not. I'll tell you what, if I had to make a bet, I'd say the far left tore down Frederick Douglass for no reason other than they want to destroy American history. The argument they had over tearing down the statue of Lincoln, there's a Lincoln Memorial, and it's Lincoln standing over a freed slave who's got broken chains and he's rising up. It was paid for by freed slaves honoring Abraham Lincoln. And their argument is there shouldn't be a symbol showing the white man above a black person. I can understand the sentiment, but that's the mentality they take continually and expand upon, which brings us now to Frederick Douglass. There shouldn't need to be abolitionists, I suppose, right? There should have never have Frederick Douglass should never even have had to make any of those arguments for freedom and liberty. That's probably where they're going with it. And it's probably why, in my opinion, it would be the far left who tore that statue down. Well, let's see what's going on with this mural and these Trump supporters. The Daily Mail reports Trump supporters paint over a city-sanctioned Black Lives Matter mural in California with black paint just hours after residents finished it on the 4th of July. The Martinez Police Department announced they were looking for an unidentified white male and female after they ruined a city-sanctioned Black Lives Matter mural with black paint. The incident began when the couple, appearing to wear Make America Great Again apparel, arrived at the mural in front of the city courthouse in downtown Martinez on July 4th. Footage shows the woman pouring a can of black paint over part of the mural and using a paint roller to cover the bright yellow letters. Now the first thing I noticed, and I just gotta say this, she's actually just painting the B and the L black. You can still see that there's a B and an L, especially from above. Not really getting rid of it. You'd have to paint over, an entire square or something to actually get rid of the letters, but, whatever. When one witness asks the woman, "What's wrong with you?" her male companion replies, "We're sick of the narrative. That's what is wrong. The narrative of police brutality, the narrative of oppression, the narrative of racism, it's a lie." The man who was recording the incident then points to the Black Lives Matter sign and calls it racism. An argument is sparked between the man and the onlookers while the woman continues to damage the mural. There is no oppression. There is no racism, the man says. It's a leftist lie from the media. You can see here in these photos. Looks like he's wearing, I think it says 4 more years on his shirt. The woman then becomes enraged at the witnesses and exclaims, "Keep that S in effing New York. It's not happening in my town." The woman appears to be referencing a number of Black Lives Matter murals approved across all 5 boroughs in New York City. If New York City, if DC, if these cities and these jurisdictions can rename things, why can't anyone else? If you have a right to paint on a public street, why don't they have a right to also paint on the public street? You see the issue here? If somebody paints over this and changes the message, you could argue it's a free speech form. Now, of course, they were permitted to do it, and the argument would be the city would have to open up a different street. Or I'd imagine that would be the argument. Hey, this is a city-sanctioned mural, right? Therefore, if they wanted to paint, they could have a different street. But alas, there's a finite amount of streets and space for which you could paint on, in which case, I personally don't agree. The way I see it is, if painting on a public street is free speech, then it's free speech. It doesn't matter if you're supporting or opposing Black Lives Matter. Why would the police go after them? Well, let's keep reading. Mayor Bill de Blasio announced that one would be painted directly in front of Trump Tower on 5th Avenue, a move that angered the president, but it was delayed last week for unspecified reasons. Maybe they realized it's a First Amendment issue, because now you're going to have everybody across New York painting in the street arguing, "Sue me, it's free speech. You made public streets speech forums. So shouldn't anybody be allowed to go now and paint any street anywhere?" And under that argument, maybe not. The city likes to say there are certain permitted areas and you can't protest in certain areas, but I'm sorry, man. I think you would lose that in the long run. That's something you've approved. Several such murals are painted on roadways across the country to show solidarity with the Black Lives Matter movement after the killing of George Floyd. That is state-sanctioned political messaging. We got a First Amendment, man. At one point, the man chimes in, "No one wants Black Lives Matter here, and all lives matter." The Martinez Police Department said that it dispatched to the Black Lives Matter mural after people reported the incident, but the couple had already fled the area. Community members on Sunday returned to the mural and repainted it. The community spent a considerable amount of time putting the mural together, only to have it painted over in a hateful and senseless manner, the department said. Okay, how about I say that this public street, available to all people and paid for by the taxpayer, was painted over with a hateful and racist message? You see how this works? It's logic. But so long as we have state-sanctioned morality and morality policing, this is what you are going to get. I think it's hilarious when we see all these leftists arguing cancel culture isn't real and stuff like this, because they act like things don't escalate. Case in point, John Oliver, when Trump said, "Where do we go next if you tear down the Confederates? George Washington, Jefferson," and Trump was right. And John Oliver says, no, we'll eventually stop. No, you won't. No, they won't. If they can do this now, it will just escalate. And don't be surprised if people retaliate. So authorities released a photo. I guess these people are actually going to be in trouble. And yeah, we'll see how things play out, I guess. I can't believe how much they've written on this. It was a public art project, blah, blah, blah. Well, here's the escalation, all right? Man pulls gun on Black Lives Matter protester after Trump supporters deface mural. A man has been arrested in Martinez, California after reportedly pulling a gun on protesters protecting a Black Lives Matter mural that had previously been vandalized by Trump supporters. Speaking to local media, one protester described how he saw the man drive past the demonstration yelling "All Lives Matter" and flipping us off. He followed the man's car on his skateboard, at which point the man allegedly made a U-turn and pointed a gun in the protester's face. Police who were at the scene pulled the man over to arrest him. He has not yet been identified. Pictures from the scene show him wearing a cap bearing the American flag, but with stripes apparently replaced by bullets. The incident comes a day after the vandalization. This we understand. Take a look at this tweet. This woman defaced the Black Lives Matter mural at Contra Costa Community Courthouse on July 4th. We will repaint that mural, and you will not silence our collective voice for justice. What about the justice for the people who had their statues torn down? No, not the Confederates. Jefferson, Grant, Washington, abolitionists being defaced in, where was it? I believe in Wisconsin and in Philadelphia. Where's justice for any of that? Where's the outrage for any of that? You know what the problem is? The left sets the tone and the right just argues against it. It is always on the left's terms. These are their murals. You damage them. The right says, "Nuh-uh, that's not fair." The left destroys statues. The right says, "Hey, that's not fair." The right isn't taking any action. They are sitting back while all of this happens and then complaining about it after the fact. It's how they handle basically everything. Let's be honest. Journalism. How many conservative news outlets are there? There's a decent amount, right? How many left-wing news outlets are there? The overwhelming majority. Conservatives mostly just comment on the left-wing narrative. The left will create a narrative. They will say, this is what happened, and the right will comment on it. It's just what they do. It's what we get. And that's why we end up with no one caring that Frederick Douglass had his statue torn down. Now, this one is deeply offensive. It should be offensive to everybody. Look, they tore down Grant, and that should have been the first red flag. I mean, they're all red flags, to be honest. But he's the general who led the Union forces against the Confederacy. When Trump condemns this, what does the left say? Trump's defending the Confederacy. They tore down abolitionists. They desecrated abolitionists in Philly. And now Frederick Douglass. Let me read you this story. Let's see what's going on. Trump responds. This shows these anarchists have no bounds. President Trump hits out after statue of black abolitionist Frederick Douglass is hacked from its base in Rochester and damaged beyond repair on the 168th anniversary of his 4th of July address. The statue, which was ripped from its base in Rochester, New York State, is believed to have been the first monument in the nation erected to honor a black American. Oh, you're getting me angrier by the minute. Seriously. Why? They're mad about someone painting a mural in the street. It's temporary, but there's no collective outrage. Where are the tweets? Where's the woke outrage over Frederick Douglass being torn down? You know what, man? I'm angry about this. I will complain about this. I'll complain about all the statues. I will shrug for the most part the Confederate ones and argue they should not be violently removed. I think they should be removed peacefully, and I think it should be done by vote. I think our founding fathers and our heroes should remain. I like Trump's Garden of Heroes, and I think Frederick Douglass, of all people, should have been protected. Instead, his statue was destroyed. It was hacked from its plinth by Maplewood Park on Sunday, and that's the 160th anniversary of Douglass's famous Independence Day speech. Police discovered the statue dumped at the brink of the Genesee River Gorge, about 50 feet from its pedestal, with damage to the base and a finger. It is not clear who the perpetrators are. Sure, maybe it's white supremacists. Sure, I have no idea. I really doubt it. I'll entertain it because we just don't know. But I'll say to this, where's the collective outrage? That's what I want to see. President Donald Trump responded to the vandalism in a tweet this afternoon, stating, statue of Frederick Douglass torn down in Rochester. This shows that these anarchists have no bounds. It appears that they found it. They removed the statue from where it was dumped at the brink of the Genesee River Gorge, about 50 feet from its pedestal. I'd like to see it repaired. They say it was beyond repair, then build a new one. Build a bigger one. Make it 50 feet tall. Make it massive. They got one in Lenin, Seattle. They got a statue of Lenin in Seattle. Nobody's torn that down. But they would tear down Frederick Douglass? These people, man. The statue stood over the Underground Railroad, where Douglass and Harriet Tubman helped shuttle slaves to freedom, said police. In Rochester on July 5th, 1852, Douglass gave the speech, "What to the slave is the 4th of July?" in which he called the celebration of liberty a sham in a nation that enslaves and oppresses its black citizens. And it was because of his words and his activism that we advanced as a country, that we became better, that we enshrined more civil rights. A civil war was fought. Many people lost their lives. I believe it was one of the bloodiest battles, if not the bloodiest battle in history. And now, 168 years later, we are continuing to strive towards granting civil rights and creating a nation of, by, and for the people. We got a ways to go. We're always improving. And he is he is a founding father of liberty. Not one of the founding fathers of this country, but one of the proponents who took the seeds and watered that plant. The seeds of liberty planted by the founding fathers watered and blossomed under people like Frederick Douglass. This is what really, really offends me. I believe in liberty. I believe in freedom, individual rights for everybody. And he's one of the greatest people to ever advocate for such a thing, confronting the hypocrisy of a nation that would argue for freedom and liberty and had slaves. And guess what? We are the winners of that conflict. We are the ones who proved that this country would uphold those words. There was a famous quote by him, by Frederick Douglass, when he told many people in one of these speeches, "Will you stand up to your own words of your Constitution?" And he was right. And there was a fight about it. And many people paid the ultimate price to guarantee that those words were met. You see, I look at historical figures like Jefferson, like Washington. Then I look at awful historical figures like Confederate leaders, like the Nazis, like Stalin. And I think about, why do we revere some with all this awful history and condemn others with awful history as well? Many people try to defend Karl Marx, saying, well, we know that he was racist, but his ideas, blah, 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 trying to use the same argument that we use when we defend the founding fathers. It's funny. They say the founding fathers should come down. Why? They're slave owners. Okay, well, Karl Marx was an overt racist. Do you want to make that argument again? But they then say, but Karl Marx's ideas, it was a sign of the times. Hold on. I'm going to stop you right there. Listen, Thomas Jefferson, George Washington, many of the founding fathers and many Americans participated in the horrific practice of slavery. Horrifying. Truly nightmarish. They did. But they planted seeds that created a world that was better. So we look back at those who planted the seeds to make a better world with reverence. We love that they did this. And from those seeds, people like Frederick Douglass were born and advocated further. And from those seeds, Martin Luther King Jr. Then I look at, say, Stalin, Marx. They were trying to plant seeds of destruction and chaos and pain and suffering. That's why we don't support them. They were stopped. Their ideas were trash. The Soviet Union was a nightmare. The seeds they planted caused mass death and starvation and discrimination. Now, a lot of these people, leftists, try to say, oh, but the Soviet Union actually had many civil rights advances. Yeah, sure. And the hundreds of millions of people who died. The Cultural Revolution brutally in China brutally tortured and murdered people. These people were planting seeds of pain and suffering and authoritarianism. But these people, the founding fathers themselves, with the clarifying words of people like Frederick Douglass, people like Harriet Tubman, they were planting seeds of liberty, of libertarianism, the right of the individual. These are the good guys. I saw a post. They said, do you want to know how you can figure out if you're the good guy or the bad guy in history? The bad guys tended to burn books, ban books, attack people. Yeah, the good guys tended to stand up for free speech, defending individuality, the rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The bad guys sought to impose their will on you. Now, I know they say history is written by the victors, right? But the Soviet Union, they existed for 100 years? And they were the bad guys the entire time. People in their own country hated them. It's why they collapsed. Now, of course, you can argue that the United States has people who hate them too. But typically, freedom wins. Liberty wins. Don't let the leftists confuse you. They like to say things like, throughout history, it was the left, it was the progressives who won. Not true. Throughout history, it was those who fought for freedom and liberty who won. You know why? Because we have the ability to adapt. Those who are free and function on merit can see the truly skilled and honorable succeed faster, stronger, better than the control economies The people who seek to impose their will over others have an advantage. They cheat, they lie. That's a distinct advantage for us, the people who believe in liberty. But the advantage we have is that meritocracy will breed strength. And we, the people who believe in liberty, have always ended up winning in the end. And that's where we are today. Going all the way back in time as far as you can, liberty tended to win. Civil rights and liberty will still win. And those who seek to manipulate and divide us, I believe, will fail. But I got to say, it is scary sometimes. It's scary to see people like Frederick Douglass ripped from his base while people scream that you deface their mural. But this should be the best example to you explaining exactly why they're the bad guys. Not only is Frederick Douglass a symbol of freedom, opposing slavery, he's a symbol of liberty winning, and that's why they tear him down. They do not want you to be free. They try to erase history because once you forget how things were, they can trick you. They can trick your children into adhering to nightmarish policies to be enslaved. Mentally, physically, whatever. That's what they're fighting for. Marxism is not freedom. These people are monsters. And this should be your evidence. Now, again, I'll preface this. We don't know who tore down Frederick Douglass. But we know it was the far left that tore down the abolitionists in Wisconsin, defaced the abolitionists in Philadelphia, Jefferson, Washington, etc. So why should I believe otherwise? It's their MO. I hope liberty prevails once again. But the price of freedom is high, and people have to be willing to pay that price. In the Civil War, many people did, and guess what? Freedom won. We'll see how things play out. Next segment's coming up at 4 p.m. over at timcast.net, and I will see you then.